A blind princess won't stop crying her baby until a human soldier enters, and everything changes. Asterisk Princess Zerathiel sat alone in her crystal chambers, holding her tiny daughter close to her chest. The baby had been crying for 3 days straight, and nothing seemed to help. The sound echoed through the tall, shining walls of the Valexian palace, traveling down the long hallways like a sad song that would not end. The princess looked tired. Her violet skin, usually bright and beautiful like the flowers in the royal gardens, had turned pale and dull. Dark circles showed under her large, golden eyes. Her silver hair, which normally sparkled like starlight, hung loose around her shoulders. She had not slept properly since her daughter was born. "Please, little one," she whispered softly to the baby. "Tell me what is wrong. Tell me what you need." But the baby could not tell her anything. Valexian world, most people did not need to speak with words. They shared thoughts and feelings directly from mind to mind. This gift, called telepathy, was how they talked to each other, how they understood the world, and how they lived their daily lives. Princess Zerathiel was different. She had been born without this special ability, while other Valexians could hear thoughts and feel emotions from across the room. She could only use her regular senses like hearing, touch, and sight. Her people called this condition sense blindness, and many thought it was a terrible curse. Growing up in the palace had been difficult for her. Other nobles would have long conversations without making any sound, leaving her completely alone. They would know things she did not know, understand jokes she could not hear, and share feelings she could not feel. Her father, the king, loved her very much, but even he sometimes forgot that she could not read his thoughts. Now, as she held her crying baby, Princess Zerathiel worried that her daughter might have the same condition. The baby could not connect with her mind, could not share what was wrong, could not tell her mother why she was so upset. The palace healers had come to examine the baby many times. Dr. Veltar, the royal physician, was the first to visit. Dr. Dot was an old Valexian with wise eyes and gentle hands. He checked the baby's body carefully, looking for any signs of illness or injury. "The child is perfectly healthy," he told the princess. "Her body is strong, her heart beats well, and she has no fever or pain that I can find." "Then why won't she stop crying?" Princess Zerathiel asked. Dr. Veltar shook his head slowly. "I do not know, Your Highness. Perhaps we should call the mind readers." The mind readers were special Valexians who could look deeper into thoughts and feelings than anyone else. 3 of them came to the princess's chambers the next day. They were tall and thin, wearing long purple robes that seemed to flow like water. Their eyes glowed with a soft blue light when they used their powerful abilities. The first mind reader, Lady Shalana, approached the baby carefully. She placed her long fingers near the infant's head and closed her eyes. For several minutes she stood very still, trying to connect with the baby's mind. "There is nothing," she said finally, opening her eyes with surprise. "I cannot sense any thoughts from this child." Second mind reader, Master Tereth, tried next. Thought. He spent even longer trying to make contact with the baby's mind. His blue eyes grew brighter as he used more and more of his power. Sweat appeared on his forehead from the effort. "It is like trying to speak to a stone," he said, stepping back. "There is no mental presence at all." The third mind reader, Elder Kailos, was the most powerful of all. She had been reading minds for over 200 years. When she tried to connect with the baby, her entire body began to glow with soft light. The other Valexians in the room could feel the waves of mental energy flowing from her. But after many minutes, she too had to stop. "This child's mind is completely closed to us," she announced. "She has inherited her mother's condition." Princess Zerathiel felt her heart sink. She had hoped her daughter would be different, that she would be able to live a normal Valexian life. Instead, the baby would face the same challenges and loneliness that the princess had always known. News of the baby's condition spread quickly through the palace. Servants whispered about it in the kitchens. Guards talked about it during their shifts. Court advisors discussed it in worried voices during their meetings. "The royal line is cursed," some people said. First the princess, now her child. What kind of future can the kingdom have with rulers who cannot hear thoughts? Others wondered. King Morden, the princess's father, tried his best to help. He called for the greatest scientists in the Empire to come and study the baby. They brought strange machines that could measure brain waves and detect mental energy. They ran test after test, checking everything they could think of. Professor Yilrik, the chief scientist, presented his findings to the royal family. The child's brain is developing normally, he explained. All the physical parts are working correctly. But the neural pathways that create telepathic abilities are simply not there. It is like being born without eyes, except she cannot see thoughts instead of light. Can you fix it? The king asked hopefully. Professor Yilrik shook his head. Sadly, we have tried many treatments over the years for sense blindness, Your Majesty. Nothing has ever worked. It appears to be permanent. As the days passed, the baby's crying grew louder and more constant. It was not just the sound that bothered people. The cries seemed to create vibrations that interfered with telepathic communication throughout the palace. Valexians found it harder to concentrate, harder to share thoughts clearly, and harder to perform their daily tasks. The palace staff began to worry. Some of the more superstitious servants thought the crying baby was bringing bad luck to the entire kingdom. They whispered that maybe the child should be sent away where she could not disturb the mental harmony of the palace. Princess Zarathiel heard these whispers, and they broke her heart. She held her daughter tighter, determined to protect her from the same rejection and loneliness she had experienced her whole life. I will not let them send you away, she promised the crying baby. We will find a way to help you, somehow. But deep inside, the princess was beginning to lose hope. If the greatest healers, the most powerful mind readers, and the smartest scientists in the empire could not help her daughter, who could? She did not know that the answer would come from a completely unexpected source, someone from a species that the Valexians considered primitive and simple, someone who would see what they could not see and understand what they could not understand. 3 star systems away from the Valexian Empire, Sergeant Marcus Chen was getting ready for his new assignment. He stood in front of a mirror in his small room aboard the human spaceship Harmony, adjusting his blue diplomatic uniform. Years old, Marcus was young for such an important job, but he had earned his place through hard work and dedication. Marcus came from Earth, a planet where people could not read minds or share thoughts like the Valexians. Instead, humans had developed their other senses very well over millions of years. They could hear the smallest sounds, feel the lightest touch, and notice things that many other species missed completely. Chen, you ready for this? Asked Captain Rodriguez as she entered his room. She was the leader of the Terran Diplomatic Security Force, and Marcus respected her greatly. Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied, turning away from the mirror. I've studied everything about Valexian culture, their history, their customs, their way of life. I know how important this mission is. Captain Rodriguez nodded approvingly. This is humanity's first real chance to build a friendship with the Valexians. They're one of the most advanced species in this part of the galaxy. If we can prove that humans are trustworthy partners, it could change everything for our people. Marcus understood the responsibility on his shoulders. For years, humans had been seen as a primitive species by most aliens. They had no telepathy, no advanced mental powers, and their technology was still developing. Many alien races looked down on them, thinking they were too simple to be useful partners. But Captain Rodriguez and other human leaders believed that their species had unique strengths. Humans were adaptable, creative, and good at solving problems in ways that other species never considered. This diplomatic mission was a chance to prove that. Remember, Captain Rodriguez continued, you're not just a guard, you're representing all of humanity. Show them what we're capable of. I won't let you down, Marcus promised. 2 days later, Marcus's shuttle approached the Valexian homeworld. Through the small window, he could see a beautiful planet covered in purple oceans and silver continents. Enormous crystal cities rose from the surface like frozen lightning, reaching high into the pink sky. It was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The shuttle landed at the royal spaceport near the capital city. As Marcus stepped out, he immediately noticed how different everything felt. The air itself seemed to shimmer with energy that made his skin tingle. Strange musical sounds filled the atmosphere, though he could not see any instruments or singers. Welcome to Veltharian, human, said a tall alien who approached him, The Valexian had the same violet skin and golden eyes that Marcus had seen in his study materials, but seeing one in person was still surprising. The alien's voice sounded different too, not just spoken words, but somehow layered with meanings that Marcus could not understand. "Thank you," Marcus replied politely. "I am Sergeant Marcus Chen of the Terran Diplomatic Security Force. I'm here for the Embassy Protection Detail." The Valexian nodded slowly. "I am Commander Zector of the Royal Guard. Follow me." There are unusual circumstances at the palace today. As they traveled through the Crystal City in a floating transport, Marcus asked, "What kind of unusual circumstances?" Commander Zector hesitated before answering. "The royal family is dealing with a personal crisis. Princess Zarathel's newborn child has been crying continuously for several days. It is disturbing the mental harmony of the palace." Marcus found this curious. On Earth, crying babies were completely normal. Human parents expected it and knew many ways to help calm their children. But he did not want to seem disrespectful by saying this to the Valexian commander. When they reached the palace, Marcus was amazed by its beauty. The building seemed to be carved from a single, enormous crystal that reflected light and rainbow patterns. Spires twisted high into the sky like frozen music, and bridges made of solid light connected different sections. But as soon as Marcus entered the main hall, he noticed something the Valexians could not. His human ears, trained through evolution to detect the smallest sounds, immediately picked up patterns in the baby's cries echoing through the building. The sounds were not random. There were rhythms, changes in tone, and pauses that told a story. "The crying seems to follow specific patterns," Marcus mentioned to Commander Zector as they walked through the hallways. The Valexian looked confused. "Patterns? I do not understand." "It is simply noise that interferes with our mental connections." Marcus realized that the Valexians, who relied so heavily on telepathy, might not have developed the same ability to analyze sounds that humans had. This was interesting, but he kept his thoughts to himself for now. They passed many palace workers who looked tired and stressed. Some held their heads as if they had headaches. Others moved slowly as if they were having trouble concentrating. The baby's cries were clearly affecting everyone in the building. "Has anyone been able to help the princess?" Marcus asked. "Our finest healers, scientists, and mind readers have all tried." Commander Zector replied with frustration in his voice. "Nothing has worked. The child appears to be healthy, but she will not stop crying. Some people are beginning to think that both the princess and her baby are cursed." Marcus felt sad hearing this. On Earth, having different abilities was often seen as a strength, not a curse. Human society had learned to value many types of intelligence and skill, but it seemed like Valexian culture expected everyone to be exactly the same. As they approached the area of the palace where the royal family lived, the crying grew louder. Marcus could hear even more details now, the baby's breathing patterns, the way her voice changed when she was tired versus when she was frustrated, and small variations that suggested different needs. Commander Marcus said carefully, "On my world, we have experience with caring for young children who cannot communicate clearly. Perhaps I could observe the situation and offer some suggestions." Commander Zector stopped walking and stared at Marcus with surprise. "You think you can help where our most advanced experts have failed? You are just a human." Marcus felt a little hurt by the comment, but he understood that the Valexian did not mean to be cruel. "I know I am just a human," he said politely. "But sometimes a different perspective can be helpful. What would it hurt to let me try?" Commander Zector considered this for a long moment. Marcus could see the alien struggling with the idea. Finally, the commander spoke. "The king is desperate. He has said he will try anything to help his daughter and granddaughter. I will ask him if he wishes to see you." "Thank you," Marcus said. "I promise I will be respectful and careful." As they continued toward the royal chambers, Marcus felt nervous but determined. He knew this was more than just helping one baby. This was a chance to show that humans had value, that their different way of seeing the world could be useful. He just hoped the Valexian royal family would give him the chance to prove it. Commander Zector led Marcus through the most beautiful parts of the palace. The walls here were made of crystal that sang with soft musical notes when they walked past. Floating lights danced in the air like tiny stars, and the floors felt warm. beneath their feet. As they got closer to Princess Zarathiel's chambers, the baby's crying became much louder. Marcus could hear it clearly now, and his trained human ears picked up many details that amazed him. The baby was not just making random noise. She was trying to communicate in the only way she knew how. "Wait here," Commander Zektar told Marcus when they reached a large door decorated with beautiful silver patterns. "I will speak with the king first." Marcus nodded and stood quietly in the hallway. While he waited, he listened carefully to the sounds coming from inside the room. He could hear not just the baby crying, but also the soft sounds of someone moving around, gentle whispers, and even the princess's quiet breathing. His human senses, developed over millions of years of evolution, could detect things that the telepathic Valexians never needed to notice. After several minutes, Commander Zektar returned with an older Valexian who wore a crown made of glowing crystals. This had to be King Morden, the ruler of the Valexian Empire. The king looked very tired, and his golden eyes showed deep worry. "So you are the human who thinks he can help my daughter and granddaughter," the king said. His voice was not unkind, but Marcus could hear doubt in it. "Your Majesty," Marcus replied, bowing respectfully as he had learned in his cultural training. "I do not know if I can help, but I would like to try. Sometimes a fresh perspective can reveal new solutions." King Morden studied Marcus for a long moment. "Our greatest experts have failed. Our most advanced technology has found nothing wrong. What makes you think you can succeed where they could not?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "On my world, we have learned to use all of our senses to understand our environment and care for our young. We cannot read minds like your people, so we had to develop other ways of knowing what children need." The king considered this. "Very well, but you must be gentle with my daughter. She has suffered enough disappointment already." "I understand, Your Majesty," Marcus promised. The king opened the door and led Marcus into the chamber. The room was even more beautiful than the hallways, with crystal walls that reflected soft rainbow light everywhere. But Marcus immediately focused on the princess sitting in the center of the room. Princess Zarathiel looked exhausted. Her violet skin was pale, her silver hair was messy, and her golden eyes were red from crying. She held a tiny baby wrapped in glowing silk cloth. The infant's cries filled the room with sound that seemed to bounce off the crystal walls and become even louder. "Daughter," the king said gently, "this is Sergeant Marcus Chen, a human diplomat. He has asked for permission to observe and perhaps offer some suggestions." Princess Zarathiel looked up at Marcus with curiosity and a tiny bit of hope. "You think you can help my baby?" she asked, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. I would like to try, Your Highness," Marcus said softly. "May I sit near you and listen for a while?" The princess nodded and gestured to a chair nearby. Marcus sat down and immediately began using his human senses to analyze the situation in ways that no Valexian could. First, he listened to the baby's cries. His ears could detect at least 5 different types of crying patterns. Some were short and sharp, others were long and wailing. The rhythm changed every few minutes, suggesting different needs or discomforts. Then Marcus looked around the room with his eyes. The crystal walls reflected light everywhere, creating bright flashes and moving shadows. To human eyes accustomed to much darker environments, this would be overwhelming for a newborn. The Valexians, who relied mainly on telepathy, probably never considered how the visual environment might affect someone who could not filter it out mentally. Next, Marcus paid attention to the sounds in the room. Besides the baby's cries, he could hear the humming of energy systems in the walls, the soft musical tones of the crystals, and even the vibrations from other parts of the palace. For a baby with developing hearing instead of telepathy, all these sounds would be confusing and overwhelming. Finally, Marcus noticed the temperature and air movement in the room. The Valexians kept their environment perfectly controlled through mental energy, but Marcus could feel tiny air currents and temperature changes that might bother a sensitive infant. "Your Highness," Marcus said carefully, "may I ask you some questions about your daughter's behavior?" "Of course," Princess Zarathiel replied. "When does she cry the loudest?" Marcus asked. The princess thought about this. "It seems random to me. Sometimes when she is lying down, Sometimes when I hold her. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes at night. Marcus nodded. Does she ever seem to calm down, even for a few minutes? Occasionally, the princess said. Usually when I hold her. Very close, and we are in the darkest corner of the room. But it never lasts long. This information confirmed Marcus's suspicions. The baby was not sick or mentally troubled. She was simply overwhelmed by sensory input that her developing brain could not process properly. Your Highness, Marcus said gently, I think your daughter is perfectly healthy, but I believe she is experiencing what humans call sensory overload. Sensory overload? The king asked. What does this mean? Marcus explained carefully. On Earth, newborn babies cannot filter out sights, sounds, and other sensations the way older children can. Their brains are still learning how to process all the information coming from their senses. When there is too much input, they become overwhelmed and cry to express their distress. Princess Zerothiel looked interested. But why would this affect my daughter? Other Valexian babies do not have this problem, because other Valexian babies can use telepathy to help their minds filter and organize sensory information. Marcus suggested your daughter, like you, cannot do this, so she must rely entirely on her physical senses, which are probably much more sensitive than normal to compensate. The princess's eyes widened with understanding. You mean she is not cursed? Or broken? She is just different. Exactly, Marcus said with a smile. And there are ways to help her. Marcus asked permission to try some techniques that humans used with overwhelmed babies. First, he showed the princess how to wrap the baby more snugly in soft cloth, creating a feeling of security that reminded the infant of being in the womb. Next, he suggested dimming the lights in the room to reduce visual stimulation. Then he demonstrated gentle, rhythmic movements that could help calm an overstimulated nervous system. As Marcus worked with the princess to try these simple techniques, something amazing happened. For the first time in 4 days, the baby's cries began to quiet down. The room fell silent, except for the baby's softer breathing. The silence in Princess Zerathiel's chamber was magical. For the first time in 4 long days, her baby daughter was not crying. The infant lay peacefully in her mother's arms, wrapped snugly in soft cloth as Marcus had shown them. Her tiny golden eyes looked around calmly, no longer overwhelmed by too much light and sound. King Morden stared in amazement. Ah! His mouth was open, and his hands shook slightly with emotion. How is this possible? He whispered. Our greatest minds could not achieve what you have done in mere minutes. Marcus smiled gently. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the hardest to see, Your Majesty. Your people are so advanced in mental abilities that you never needed to develop the same understanding of physical senses that humans have. Princess Zerathiel looked down at her peaceful daughter with tears of joy in her golden eyes. She is so calm now. But how do I keep her this way? How do I learn to care for her properly? Teach you, Marcus offered. The techniques humans use are not complicated, but they do require practice and understanding. Over the next several hours, Marcus began showing the princess things that human parents learn naturally. He explained how to recognize different types of crying and what each one meant. A short, sharp cry usually meant hunger. Ah! A long, wailing cry often meant tiredness. A frustrated, angry cry could mean the baby needed a diaper change or was too hot or cold. Listen carefully to the sounds, Marcus instructed, demonstrating with his own voice. Each cry has a different rhythm and tone. Your ears can learn too. Tell them apart, just like your eyes can learn to see different colors. Princess Zerathiel practiced listening to her daughter's small sounds. At first, all the baby's noises seemed the same to her. But as Marcus guided her attention, she began to notice subtle differences that she had never heard before. I think I hear it, she said excitedly after an hour of practice. That little sound she just made, it was different from her crying. Earlier, exactly, Marcus encouraged her. That sound means she is content and comfortable. Human babies make that noise when they feel safe and loved. Marcus also taught the princess about the sense of touch. He showed her how to hold the baby in different positions to help with digestion, how to gently massage tiny muscles to help with sleep, and how to use skin-to-skin contact to build a strong emotional bond. Your people communicate through thoughts. Marcus explained, but humans bond through physical contact. Touch releases special chemicals in our brains that create feelings of love and safety. Your daughter may respond to this type of bonding better than mental connection. The princess learned quickly. Her hands, which had felt clumsy and useless when trying to care for her crying baby, now moved with growing confidence. She discovered that she could actually sense her daughter's mood through tiny changes in the baby's muscle tension and breathing patterns. "This is incredible, Princess," Zarathiel said with wonder. "I never knew that bodies could communicate so much information." "Without telepathy," Marcus nodded. "On Earth, we had to develop these abilities to survive. Before humans learned to speak with words, we relied on body language, sounds, and touch to communicate with each other. These skills saved our species many times throughout history. As the day continued, more members of the royal household came to see the miracle that was happening in the princess's chamber. Palace servants peeked through the doorway in amazement. Court advisors whispered excitedly about the sudden peace and quiet. Even the stern palace guards seemed curious about what the human had done. Dr. Veltar, royal physician, was among the first to visit. He examined the baby carefully and confirmed that she was indeed much calmer and healthier looking than before. "This is remarkable," the old doctor admitted to Marcus. "I have studied medicine for over 100 years, but I never considered that the solution might involve physical senses rather than mental ones." Word spread quickly throughout the Crystal Palace. Within hours, Valexians from all levels of society were talking about the human method of baby care. Many were amazed that such a simple approach had succeeded where their advanced technology had failed. Commander Zektar returned to check on the situation and found a completely transformed scene. Instead of a crying, distressed baby and an exhausted princess, he saw a peaceful family learning new ways to communicate and bond. "I must admit," the commander said to Marcus, "I did not expect this outcome. Perhaps there is more value in human knowledge than I realized." Marcus appreciated the honesty. "Every species develops differently based on their environment and challenges," he replied. "Valexians became masters of the mind because that served your evolution. Humans became masters of adaptation because that served ours. Both approaches have value." As evening approached, Marcus continued teaching Princess Zarathiel more advanced techniques. He showed her how to create a soothing environment using soft fabrics, gentle movements, and even simple humming sounds that could calm an overstimulated baby. "Music is very powerful for humans," Marcus explained as he demonstrated a lullaby from Earth. "The rhythm and melody can actually change brain waves and help with sleep and relaxation." The princess tried humming along, and her daughter's eyes grew heavy with sleepiness. For the first time since her birth, the baby fell into a deep, peaceful sleep without crying. "I cannot believe this," Princess Zarathiel whispered, afraid to speak too loudly and wake her daughter. "For days I felt like a failure as a mother. I thought I could never properly care for my child because I could not read her thoughts." "You are not a failure," Marcus said firmly. "You're just using the wrong tools for the job. Now you have new tools that work better for your daughter's specific needs." The princess looked at Marcus with deep gratitude. "You have given me hope that I had lost. But more than that, you have shown me that being different is not the same as being broken." King Morden, who had been watching quietly from the corner of the room, stepped forward. "This human speaks wisdom," he said thoughtfully. "Perhaps we Valexians have been too quick to judge those who cannot share our telepathic gifts." As news of the successful treatment spread beyond the palace, something unexpected began to happen. Other Valexian families, who had children or relatives with sense blindness, started asking questions. Could these human techniques help them too? Were there other ways to communicate and connect that did not require telepathy? For the first time in Valexian history, being different was beginning to look like it might be a strength rather than a weakness. And it was all because one human soldier had listened carefully and cared enough to help. 6 months had passed since Marcus first entered Princess Zarathiel's chambers. The crystal palace that had once echoed with endless crying now filled with sounds of laughter, gentle music, and peaceful conversations. The changes went far beyond just one quiet baby. They had transformed an entire way of thinking. Princess Zarathiel sat in the palace gardens, holding her daughter Lyra under the soft purple sky of Valtharion. The baby, now 6 months old, is not only healthy and happy but showing remarkable abilities that amazed everyone who met her. "Watch this, Marcus," the princess said as the human soldier approached them in the garden. She placed little Lyra on a soft blanket surrounded by different colored crystals. The baby immediately turned toward a blue crystal on her left, reaching for it with perfect accuracy. Then, without looking, she pointed toward a small fountain 20 feet away, just as it began to play a new musical pattern. She knew the fountain was going to change its tune before it happened, Princess Zarathiel explained with pride. And she can sense the energy patterns of different crystals without even touching them. Marcus smiled as he watched the demonstration. Her other senses have developed beyond normal levels to make up for the lack of telepathy. It's like how blind humans often develop extremely good hearing. Lyra is becoming something new, a bridge between the telepathic and non-telepathic worlds. The baby looked up at Marcus and made happy babbling sounds. Over the months, she had learned to recognize his voice and always seemed excited when he visited. Through the princess's patient teaching, Lyra was learning to communicate through sounds, gestures, and expressions in ways that no other Valexian child could. The royal scientists are very interested in studying her development, Princess Zarathiel said. But not as a problem to be fixed, as a new type of ability to be understood and respected. This change in attitude had been one of the most important results of Marcus's intervention. Dr. Veltar, the royal physician, had started a research program to study non-telepathic communication methods. Professor Ulrich was developing new technologies that could help sense-blind Valexians navigate their world more easily. "Speaking of new developments," Marcus said, pulling out a small crystal device, "I have something to show you." The device projected a holographic image into the air above them. It showed a beautiful building under construction in the capital city, with both human and Valexian architectural styles blended together. "The Human Valexian Cultural Exchange Center," Marcus announced proudly. King Morden approved the construction. "Last month, it will be a place where both our species can learn from each other." Princess Zarathiel's eyes sparkled with excitement. "And I will be the director?" "If you want the job," Marcus confirmed. "Your father believes you are the perfect person to lead this program. Who better than someone who understands both the challenges of being different and the strengths that come from diversity?" The princess had indeed become a powerful advocate for change in Valexian society. She traveled throughout the empire, meeting with families who had sense-blind members and teaching them the techniques Marcus had shown her. Her work had helped hundreds of Valexians who had previously felt isolated and useless. "I never imagined that my greatest weakness would become my greatest strength," she reflected, gently rocking baby Lyra. "Growing up, I felt like a burden on my family and my people. Now I feel like I have a purpose." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "On Earth, we have a saying, 'Different is not less.' It means that having unique abilities or challenges doesn't make someone worth less than others. Just makes them different, and difference can be valuable." As they talked, Commander Zektar approached them with a group of young Valexian soldiers. The commander had become one of Marcus's strongest supporters in the palace, often asking him to share human military strategies and training methods. "Sergeant Chen," Commander Zektar said formally. "These soldiers have completed their training in human observation techniques. They would like to demonstrate what they have learned." Marcus watched with interest as the Valexian soldiers performed exercises that seemed simple but were actually quite advanced. They identified different sounds with their eyes closed, detected small changes in their environment using only their physical senses, and even communicated with each other using hand gestures instead of telepathy. "Excellent work," Marcus praised them. "These skills will make you much better soldiers and explorers. When you encounter species that cannot communicate telepathically, you will be able to understand and work with them effectively." One of the young soldiers stepped forward nervously. "Sergeant Chen, sir, before we met you, we thought humans were primitive because they could not read thoughts. Now we understand that humans develop different abilities that are just as valuable. We are honored to learn from you." Marcus felt a warm sense of pride and accomplishment. When he had first arrived on Valtharion, he had hoped to prove that humans could be useful partners. Now, 6 months later, human techniques were being taught throughout the Valexian military and civilian population. Honor is mutual, Marcus replied. I have learned as much from you as you have learned from me. This was true. Living among the Valexians had taught Marcus about the power of mental discipline, the importance of harmony in society, and new ways of solving problems through cooperation rather than competition. King Morta appeared in the garden, walking slowly among the crystal flowers that sang softly in the breeze. The king looked much happier and more relaxed than he had 6 months ago. Marcus, my friend, the king said warmly, I have received a message from your Captain Rodriguez. She is very pleased with your work here and would like to extend your assignment for another year. Marcus felt torn, missed Earth and his fellow humans, but he had grown to love this beautiful world and its people. More importantly, there was still so much work to be done. I would be honored to stay, Your Majesty, Marcus replied, but only if Princess Zarathiel agrees to continue our partnership. The princess laughed, a sound like crystal bells ringing. Ow! Try to leave and I will have you arrested, she joked. Lyra needs her honorary Uncle Marcus, and I still have much to learn about human child-rearing techniques. As if she understood the conversation, baby Lyra clapped her tiny hands and made delighted gurgling sounds. The adults all laughed, and even the serious soldiers smiled at the happy baby. Looking around at the peaceful garden scene, Marcus realized that this mission had become about much more than diplomacy or security. It had become about building bridges between different ways of life, showing that diversity made both species stronger and proving that understanding could overcome any barrier. The crying baby who had once disrupted an entire palace had become the catalyst for a friendship that would last for generations. And it all started because one human soldier chose to listen carefully and care deeply about solving a problem that others thought was impossible. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from strength or technology, but from compassion and the willingness to see things differently.